Okay, so for passion fruit parfait, we have 250 grams of cream, 100 grams of sugar, 100 grams of passion fruit puree, 5 grams of gelatin, 50 grams of butter, 4 yolks, and 1 egg. Now first we're going to take the passion fruit puree, bring it to a boil. This is partially to pasteurize the puree and also to heat it up so that you can emulsify in the butter. Now you're going to take the cold butter, cut it into pieces, and add it piece by piece as if you're making a beurre blanc or an emulsified sauce. If you're having trouble finding passion fruit puree, check a Latin market near you and check the freezer section. That's where I got mine. You can use a hand blender if you want. That'll more fully emulsify the two ingredients. Okay, now you want to whip your cream. I did it by hand because it's a small amount, so it's easy. You can use the machine if you want. And you're going to take it until it's still pourable, maybe a little bit under soft peaks, nice and frothy. And once it's finished, put it in the fridge and move on. Okay, so you're going to take your sugar, moisten it with a little bit of water, and bring it to a boil. At the same time, turn the mixer on high speed and begin to whip your eggs. You want to bring your sugar mixture to 248 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 120 Celsius. And once it reaches temp, pour it down the side of your bowl as you see. Try not to hit the tines too much. Afterwards, you're going to add the gelatin, which you should have bloomed in a little bit of water. About 30-35 grams of water would be fine. So after you've poured the sugar in, add the gelatin. Now this is called a pate bomb. You want to whip until the side of the bowl feels room temperature and is quadrupled in volume. So now that we have a nice, perfectly airy pate bomb, which leaves ribbons when you lift the whisk out, we're going to fold the rest of the items in. Now, fold in first the passion fruit butter mixture, followed by the cream. Be sure and use a rubber spatula and fold it properly so that you preserve all the air bubbles that you work so hard to create. Now, take a piping bag, and if you're like me, put a parchment down because I'm quite messy and it makes a cleaner experience. Fill up your piping bag. And fill your molds, which I've sprayed with a no stick spray. You can see with the piping bag it's much cleaner as opposed to pouring it or scooping it with a spoon. I don't even want to think about that. So once you've fully filled up the molds, wrap it in plastic, otherwise your item's going to smell like the freezer. Stick it in the freezer, and finito. Onto the sponge, we have 40 grams of butter softened, 90 grams, 66% chocolate, 3 eggs separated, and 25 grams of sugar. Now, if you look at this recipe, there's no flour or really any sort of starch. So it's essentially a flourless chocolate cake. Really, when you look at it, it's almost like a chocolate mousse that you bake. It's very rich. I wanted something that has nice flavor and texture, but also could stand up well in the freezer. And the fact that it's gluten free is also a plus because our other parfait items don't have flour, so it completes the picture. Now I'm adding the chocolate to the butter and I'm going to beat them together until they almost look like a chocolate frosting. Then beat in the yolks and be sure and keep this warm while you move on to the whites because it can seize up and you want it to look shiny like that. Now start to beat the whites and add the sugar little by little like you're making the French meringue, very standard. And when you get the stiff peaks, you're going to fold it in, add a third of the meringue quickly just to lighten the mixture, and then fold the rest in carefully to preserve the air bubbles which will expand in the oven and give your sponge its nice texture. I add a little shot of Armagnac at the end because I like it with milk chocolate. You can add any flavoring you want, rum, cognac, or nothing. It's all going to be delicious. So if you have an offset spatula, it makes this a lot easier. I used 2 pans, so I split the batter in half and spread it, moving from side to side, moving the pan as I go. Which is not a pan at all, but a square frame on top of a silpat. Bake at 375 degrees for literally 6 minutes tops. When it's done, let it cool completely before wrapping in plastic and freezing. And now we make the milk chocolate frozen mousse. Oh yeah. So we start with 170 grams of milk chocolate, 2 measurements of sugar, each 75 grams, 6 yolks, 3 grams of gelatin, which you're going to bloom in cold water, 340 grams of cream, a pinch of salt, and a shot of Armagnac. So we already went over the passion parfait, so I'm going to go through this a little quicker because I think you get the gist. Whip the cream with the first measurement of sugar. Take the second measurement of sugar with Armagnac and a little water. Cook at 248, pouring over the whipping egg yolks. Add the bloom gelatin and whip until cool. Fold in the milk chocolate, which should be warm, at least 110 or 115, otherwise it'll seize up. Then fold in your cream, and you're good to go. Now that all your components are built, you can configure it however you want. I used a square of sponge, put 6 portions of the passion, and then I piped the milk chocolate around it. Other ideas are a multi-layered terrine or a more traditional round cake shape. Now wrap and freeze. Now to finish, carefully release it. Alright, now keep your knife in a hot water bath so that it's hot and cuts through cleanly, but be sure and wipe it off each time you use it because you don't want to get water in the food. Cut into the size portions that you like. Clean up and trim the edges. And remember to work quickly because this is frozen and it's going to be served frozen. You don't want to thaw out and then refreeze food. That's a big no-no. You can garnish it however you like. I sifted cocoa powder on the top and decorate it with sliced mango to go along with the passion fruit. Here you can see the final product. Totally freaking delicious.